welcome to episode 110 of the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast. I'm your host, Annabelle Bateman, and today, for the first part of our conversation, we're having a little bit of an Aussie-focused conversation, although I think regardless of where you are in the world, you'll still find it interesting because I'm having a conversation with my guest today, Dr. Amy Gajjar, who is a UK-trained doctor who has lived in Australia for the last number of years, and is a practicing integrative doctor here in Australia. So she's got a bit of comparison between the UK and here in terms of how thyroid health is managed. So we have a bit of a chat about that, which I think probably will be of interest to you regardless of where you are, because it gives you a bit of an indication of how similar or how different the health systems are with respect to thyroid health around the world. We also have a conversation about COVID and the connection in how COVID impacts thyroid health. And then that leads into a lovely discussion about lifestyle, particularly focused in on sleep. So there's a bit of variety in the conversation today. But let me tell you a little bit about Amy. Dr. Amy Gajjar is an integrative physician okay, edit that bit out. Dr. Amy is an integrative physician combining functional medicine, coaching, yoga, and Ayurvedic lifestyle. She trained at the Imperial College of School of Medicine in London and worked as a GP for several years. In Sydney, she's undergone extensive further training and is a fellow of the Australian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine, which, as an aside, you probably noticed that quite a few of my Australian guests have been trained there, just like last week's guest, Dr. David Cowhig, from a holistic dental point of view. Anyway, back to Amy. She's also part of the Australasian Society of Lifestyle Medicine and a board-certified lifestyle medicine physician. Her main interests are thyroid disease, gut health, and autoimmunity. She's completed courses in coaching, NLP, Ayurvedic lifestyle meditation, and is a certified Hatha and Kundalini yoga teacher. She's also a lecturer, examiner, and part of the educational faculty for ACNAM. She loves to write blogs, articles for health and wellness magazines, and enjoys presenting at public community workshops, seminars, and retreats. She's a medical advisor to Dance Health Alliance, which is a not-for-profit organisation that facilitates dance programs to improve the quality of life, mind and body balance for people with neurological conditions like dementia and MS. Dr. Amy believes in taking a holistic approach to patient care, embracing all aspects of health, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Slow Butterfly, which we also talk about. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Slow Butterfly is her first book, all about our beautiful, slow little thyroid butterfly-shaped gland, and hopes to really empower people with Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism through writing that book. She also wants to write more books. I think you'll really enjoy this conversation, so don't forget to check out at the end the KISS Thyroid coaching segment to help implement what you have just listened to. All right, enjoy. Welcome, Dr. Amy Gajjar, to the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast, all the way from Sydney. So I love it. I love having other people within Australia on this show. So welcome.
Great. Thank you for inviting me, Annabelle.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. I think I came across you when you released your book, Slow Thyroid, and because I thought, wow, there's another Australian thyroid book. There's not many Australian thyroid books, and so I thought, oh, okay, this is great. I'll have to get Amy onto the podcast. It took me a little while to invite you, but here we are, and we're going to talk a bit about that, but I'd love to know a little bit about what's your interest in thyroid health first.
Yeah, so I guess the journey started with me wanting to be in alignment with myself. So at the point where I decided to leave NHS general practice in London and move over to a more better work-life balance in Australia, see what Australia had to offer. So there was a lot of my own, I guess, personal journey there as well, and I looked into what sort of work do I want to do, and I wanted to work more holistically, and I came across an organization here called ACNAM, which is the Australasian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine, and I thought this is just what I want to do. Given that I was at a point in even considering leaving medicine, and to finally think I've actually found like an avenue that I can work as a GP but in a more holistic fashion. So I basically embarked upon that training. And then I started to work in a holistic practice up on the northern beaches here. So that was over a decade ago.
Yep.
And all happened together. I guess I remember doing the thyroid and adrenal module and thinking this is fascinating, and it just started to give me a lot of answers, into yeah, why people were still feeling unwell, and why thyroxin isn't always enough. Just started giving me a lot more insight into the whole thyroid world. And obviously I started seeing patients in the clinic, so I was able to sort of put it all together, and sort of just learn as I went along as well, with guidance of my colleague who I was working with as well, who was a very experienced integrative doctor. So it was in seeing patients who, the common scenarios we get where people were just not feeling well, nothing's been diagnosed, everything is normal on the blood results, to other patients where they have a diagnosed hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, they're on thyroxine or monitoring, but still not feeling better. And together with the learning I was doing with Acronym, but also later on at the Institute of Functional Medicine in the US, attending courses and conferences and everything, it sort of all started making sense. And I think you then just start attracting more patients, and yeah, so that's
Yeah.
really how it started. And it's just become a real area of interest for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And because a lot of, I think a lot of doctors and a lot of practitioners in this space have thyroid problems, but it doesn't sound like you do. So you can be even more objective. Like, is that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
looking back, I recognized that there was, but I hadn't recognized it at the time. It's only when I look
Ah,
back now that, all that stress I was going through. And if I recall
mm,
back to the symptoms I was having with fatigue and weight, and, just feeling sluggish. But again, like many people, I just put that down to stress. I got my bloods
yeah,
done. My TSH was normal. I didn't have the insight I do now.
uh-huh.
So there's certainly, there's part of my own personal journey as well.
Mm.
But yeah, it's you just put it down to work stress and personal
Yeah.
stress,
Yeah,
and
there's so many things you can pass it off onto, isn't it?
yeah,
It's just this, it's
yeah,
just that, it's yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and
and
that's part of the problem. Yeah.
yeah, and especially when everything was normal, perhaps a bit of low iron, that was about it, but everything else,
Mhm.
back then in my blood was normal. So I guess when I relate to like my personal journey into getting into thyroid, it was also just how even though I didn't recognize anything at the time, I decided to make that shift and see what life had to offer me in Australia, see what medicine was like abroad, but also the
Yeah.
travel. Um, and just trying to live more on purpose and authentically. So that all, in a roundabout way, helped me in many different ways as well. But
Yeah.
just by
Yeah.
intuitively thinking, okay, how can I improve my diet, my lifestyle, do
Mm.
work I love, and actually live with some sort of purpose and alignment as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you're practicing
Yes.
well, I'm sure you preach to your clients as well. Well, and Amy, you're in a unique, well, in a unique position where you've practiced in the UK, you've practiced here. I
Yeah.
thought it would be good to get a little bit of insight into your perspective on Australian thyroid health management, because I know
Yeah.
you could be listeners could be listening from all over the world, but the reality is this
Yeah.
is the only Australian thyroid podcast, and
Yeah.
we do have a lot of Australian listeners. So I
Yeah.
thought we cover a little bit of a Australian specific thyroid information. So yeah, how
Yeah.
do you see, I guess the big picture of thyroid health management in Australia, and then I might ask you a few more specific questions.
Yeah, generally speaking, I would say it's comparable to other countries like the UK, but I do feel here that things are slightly different in terms of, I feel there's more access to all sorts of integrative and holistic practitioners, so integrative GPs, naturopaths, nutritionists, but
Uh-huh.
also other allied health practitioners like chiropractors, kinesiologists who are aware of thyroid health as well. So I feel there's more accessibility to all aspects of that healthcare compared to in the UK, and especially here because to some degree, private rebates and Medicare rebates are available, so that makes it a bit more accessible than being
Uh-huh.
totally private, as it would be in the UK, not subsidized in any way.
Uh-huh.
So I think. Yeah, so that's certainly a key difference, I think, between say the UK and here, and I
Mm.
think I would still say in terms of general thyroid management, I would still say it's on the side of inadequate in terms of we still have as in most cases countries, it's the thyroid stimulating hormone, the pituitary hormone TSH that's looked at primarily. If we look at the RSCGP guidelines, for example, treatment after TSH over 10.
What? Over 10? That's the
So,
Australian guidelines.
well, so there's different categories. So over 10, definitely treatment. If it's say
Yeah.
at the other
Oh
end, if
gosh.
it's at the other end, but where it's the TSH is between 4 and almost 7, if you're under 65, then a trial of thyroxine it can be trialed if people are symptomatic. If you're over 65, it's monitoring as well. So there's nothing for, let's just say the TSH was 3.9, nothing.
Mm.
So that scenario of where we're only looking at TSH and treating when it becomes over a certain level for subclinical hypothyroidism, it's it's still here. So that's
Mm.
therefore an inherent problem in terms of many people out there still being undiagnosed. Um, so yeah, it's I think over time, perhaps with more awareness and it becoming more common here, I'm starting to see patients coming in who've seen their GPs and they have had their antibodies tested and they have had
Okay.
even T4 and T3 tested. I'm seeing more of that, whether that's sort of
Hmm.
sort of perhaps their own general interest or there's just a bit more awareness around thyroid health in Australia, because we
Hmm.
have more practitioners interested in it. So I think there's a bit of a difference, but still on the inadequate side, I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you think it? Uh, when you say you're seeing patients who have already had their antibodies and the T4, T3
yeah,
tested, do,
yeah.
I mean, you may not know this, but is this, do you think, coming from the doctors, or do you think the patients are becoming a bit more
Yeah,
educated and
it's
asking for it?
yeah. So it's often patients. Um,
Hmm.
more often than not, it's often patients. I think with people obviously listening to podcasts and YouTube and just more material out there, obviously online as well.
Hmm.
And obviously there's thyroid clinics and a lot of thyroid practitioners as well. So I think a lot of what I see is actually people who've either asked their GPs and then they get tested, or they even go through private testing online
Yep.
as well.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, at
um,
least we've got that option
yeah,
here. Is
yeah,
yeah, is that there are private labs, so that's good.
yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
sad that you've got to go that path, but at least there is that path.
yes, yeah, yeah. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's certainly a lot more awareness amongst patients.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's good. Then
yeah,
maybe some
yeah,
of what we're doing is working. So that's
yeah,
good.
yeah,
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 that is
definitely.
good. Do do you see, so you think it's sort of on the improve, like it's still a bit lacking,
Yeah,
but on the improve?
yeah, I think so, and also, and I'm sure you found this as well. I think I've had patients coming and saying that they've listened to a particular podcast or watched something on YouTube, come across the book. So I think through all these different platforms that everyone's doing, I think that all helps to create awareness. And then obviously people can talk to each other amongst family, friends, and I think
Mm,
often goes that way as well. And there's certainly a lot of patients I see, it's often word of mouth through family and friends as well.
yeah.
So yeah,
So what could we be, what do you think we should still be doing, like, or or doing next to improve the thyroid health management here?
yeah. I think as with many things, you often starts at that ground level. So I think what we're doing, I think, is definitely still key, and slowly, hopefully, it will filter through. And I think as more evidence comes about, that will slowly shift the guidelines, but that will take a while. But I think the key thing is for us to do what we can as patients, as practitioners, to try and get the word out there. And that's why I'm also passionate about, again, just getting the information out there in different ways through through books, through social media, just to create that awareness.
Yeah, yeah. And gradually, I mean, I think the thing that I mean, my non-medical perspective, is that over the real problem, or the real solution perhaps, comes back into the original training of doctors, like the
Yes.
medical
Yeah.
education. Because
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
frustrated, like a lot of patients, for a lot of times, thinking, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like why are doctors not, why can't they see the whole picture? Why,
Yeah.
and I've come to the understanding, well, they basically doing what they've been trained to do. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that doctors are doing the wrong thing. It's just they haven't been trained,
Yeah.
unless you've done the extra training like you've done.
Yes. Yeah.
And like my doctor's done. And in fact, I
Yeah.
just interviewed on Friday a holistic dentist, and he
Yeah.
went through, he's actually from the UK as well, originally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he came and did the ACNAM, some training through ACNAM as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
obviously that additional training, super helpful, but that your
Yeah.
basic thyroid education for all of your general practitioners, it sounds like that's sort of the longer term. Would
Yeah.
that be fair?
Definitely, definitely, the changes starting in medical school, which again we're slowly seeing. Like for example, if you think of other chronic illnesses like diabetes and hypertension, cardiovascular disease, lifestyle is like any GP now would talk about lifestyle.
Uh-huh.
So that's not yet filtered with thyroid health, but I think over time,
Mhm.
as we get more research, it will. And yeah, I agree. I think we'll definitely need to see changes at the medical school level, with that knowledge that lifestyle impacts a lot of conditions, not just diabetes and cardiovascular disease.
Mhm.
And then also with obviously training organizations like ACNAM and IFM, you know, more and more people, more and more GPs taking an interest to go through that. Again, that just has that ripple effect as well. If even one extra GP has done that extra training, it can impact so many people, you know, patients, but also their colleagues as well. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
It's good. So, I mean, for the average Australian thyroid patient,
yeah,
I mean, how do you recommend they get good thyroid health care?
yeah,
Obviously, if you're in the Northern Beaches, you can come see you.
yeah,
And we'll come to how people can connect with you
yeah,
later. But yeah, like how, well, particularly given we're a big spread out country, I hear from
yeah,
patients that particularly probably live in more regional areas that really can
yes,
struggle to find a
yeah,
doctor. Better there
yeah.
hacks, or what tips, or what can you recommend?
Yeah, yeah. I think in terms of seeing health practitioners, I mean, I think that there's a lot of allied health practitioners who have an interest in thyroid health. Like, I work alongside other naturopaths and nutritionists as well who have an interest in thyroid health. There are thyroid clinics as well. So looking for an allied health practitioner who has an interest in thyroid health is still a good start,
Uh
because
huh.
there's so much. It's not just about, as we know, about medication, but initially, those pillars of all the lifestyle aspects as well, and obviously nutrients and herbs can really help. And sometimes that's all that someone might need. They may not need medication or any medication adjustments. So I think that's
Mm.
always a good place to start. And obviously they can be accessed online as well. Certainly, if someone's on medication or may need medication, perhaps things are a bit more progressive with their thyroid health, or there's other complications like that they've had thyroid cancer or surgery or anything like that. Then it can be beneficial to see integrative GP. And again, now telehealth is so much more accessible. So I guess that's one
Yeah,
one good thing about
a
COVID.
good thing from the pandemic. Yep.
It's made telehealth at least more accessible. So
Hmm.
I also, as many of us do, we see patients from all parts of the country and the world.
Uh huh. Yep.
So including again people who are regional who can't always get to Sydney,
Mm.
and at least there is that available.
Yeah,
So
that's
um,
true. That's good.
and again, obviously, all these other resources in terms of books and podcasts, and there's a lot of
Mm.
great information out there online as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Yeah, and that's what I say. Talk about building a support team, and
yeah,
so, like you said, I mean, maybe you can't, maybe you do, need to work with your local GP.
yeah,
But if you've got a naturopath, or maybe you can see someone online, or get some help from people you never meet in person, like perhaps you or I, or other, even
yeah,
podcast books from around the world. But
yeah,
if you've at least got, some information, you can perhaps help to educate your own doctor.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
I've definitely found naturopaths really helpful. Like, I've got sort of two naturopaths that I've worked with on and off over the years in
Yeah.
conjunction with my doctor. And yeah, definitely I'm a big advocate for that
Yeah.
holistic approach. And if, yeah, like you say, if you've got a good naturopath or chiropractor or
Yeah.
kinesiologist or someone like that
Yeah.
that is knowledgeable about thyroid, then
Yeah.
they can kind of fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to have that tribe, as it were. So you've got
Mm,
people coming from different perspectives, and if someone always is also on leave, there's always you've always got someone else you can see, and I think it's good. And often people do have naturopaths, as you say, chiro, kinesiology, other practitioners in their sort of circle. And I think it's always good to get those different perspectives as well, because as we know, it's there's so many aspects of thyroid health, including the emotional aspects as well. So that's where chiro and kinesiology and psychology, all that can play a part as well. So yeah,
mm.
important to have a tribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I might just come back and ask you a question about medication, because
yeah,
I guess that's another question that fits within the medical
yes,
space. Given that the traditional medication is just the T4 replacement,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, what? So from an Australian perspective,
yeah,
and I think this is where it does vary, from
yes,
country to country, is access
yeah,
to
yeah,
different kinds of thyroid medication.
yeah.
What do you see in our context?
Yeah. So here, I think we're very fortunate that there is a lot available. There are there are compounding pharmacies if we want to sort of add in T3 or thyroid extract, as well as other relevant medications like low dose naltrexone, um, DHA as well. So compared to certainly the UK, it's not compounding is not a is not really there's only a few there I know of, whereas here there's plenty of compounding pharmacies, and there's certainly scope to potentially prescribe as appropriate as well. So as with all the other guidelines in other countries, here as well, thyroxin it is the only recognized treatment, but what we are starting to slowly see, even in the guidelines. So in the US guidelines for thyroid and endocrinology, they are recognizing that T3 can be added if monotherapy with thyroxine is insufficient. And
Okay.
there's also been a recent paper from the UK echoing that same philosophy as well. That recognition that for some people thyroxine isn't sufficient, and T3 can be considered. Um, None of them really advocate thyroid extract, but thyroid extract, as we know, was the original treatment before thyroxine was manufactured by pharmaceutical companies. And yeah, it may not be first line, but there are patients who are on it here in the US and other countries who actually do better on that than T4 and T3. But many integrative GPs, including myself, I do prescribe T3 in addition if it's indicated, and potentially thyroid extract if we need to go down that path as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So at least we've got some options. It
Yeah.
might just need to, I suppose that's perhaps where you might need to find a doctor like
Yeah.
yourself who
Yeah.
is knowledgeable about how to prescribe those other types of thyroid medications. And maybe not every GP would know that or be prepared to do that. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, with T3, so there is a pharmaceutical preparation of T3 called thyroxin, which is a 20 microgram dose. Usually, it's endocrinologists who prescribe that. Um,
Uh-huh.
so whereas integrative GPs, we can compound T3 as well. Often starting at lower doses, because it's always as with anything, it's always good to sort of start low, go slow. So that's the beauty of compounding, that we can actually sort of really tailor make what we need to give. Someone may need lower doses, some may need higher doses,
Yeah.
and you're getting clean formulations as well, without the
Yeah.
excipients and everything as well. So at least that way here there is that freedom to potentially add in T3. We can even do compounding T4 if people are reacting to excipients within their thyroxine medications as well. So yeah, so certainly compared to the UK, I think there's a lot of potential flexibility to try alternative treatments, which is great.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is great. And I know there's some conversation in, at least amongst patients, around the new sort of shelf-stable version of thyroxin. I
Yeah.
think it's Lavoxin, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And it's meant to be the same. Not everyone's patient, not all patients seem to respond exactly the same as the refrigerated version.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
are your thoughts about that and how? Because I'll tell you, before I ask you, I want to
Yeah.
say, so I recently went to my pharmacist to get, my script filled,
Yeah.
and came back and I'd just been given the Lavoxin, and I
Yeah.
said, I don't want this one. I don't mind if it's Eutroxig, which is the
Yeah.
no-name one, but I
Yeah.
want the refrigerated one. That's what, I've been on forever,
Yeah.
25 years or something. I said, I
Yeah.
don't want to change. Oh, it's exactly the same. I said, well, I'm not sure that it is exactly the same. So I had a
Yeah.
bit of a discussion with the pharmacist, and I did end up going away with what I wanted, but it took
Yeah.
quite some discussion
Yeah.
to for that to happen.
Yeah.
And I've spoken about it since with my doctor, but I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on that particular
Yeah.
issue, because we're all being faced with that issue now when we go to get our scripts filled.
Yeah. Yeah. So the one that you don't need to refrigerate is called L-troxin. So and the excipients are also different as well. So L-troxin doesn't have lactose, whereas the other forms of thyroxin, Eutroxig, Levoxin, Oroxin, they all will have these other excipients, including lactose as well. So with L-troxin, there's no gluten, and there's no lactose either. So, but that is considered to be 10% less effective than the others in terms of we might just need to adjust the dose. So if someone's been on one of the other forms of thyroxine,
Mm-hmm.
L-troxin, we may need to do a slightly higher dose. But that's probably one of the better versions. But yes,
Yep.
the all the others they are made by different pharmaceutical companies. The excipients do vary. So yeah, all thyroxine is not the same. There are these subtle differences.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they sort of say it's the same, but it's not exactly the same.
No.
So it might just take a bit of playing
Yes.
around
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think the one I was given was Lavoxine.
Yeah.
It wasn't the Eltroxig.
Okay.
Yeah.
This.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
it's just a different brand, but it was a non-refrigerated one.
yeah.
So is it
Yeah.
okay? I mean, is it okay, do you think, for patients when they're getting their scripts filled to be specific, or do you know? Like, can
Yeah.
we be specific?
Yeah. Yeah. Because obviously, I mean, for those who are particularly sensitive to say lactose, as many thyroid patients are, it can be an issue.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
you want to be using forms. It sounds very minor with just one tablet, but it can still still be an issue. And then
Mm-hmm.
ideally you want to be having as least excipients as possible. And as I said,
Yeah.
sometimes even with the few excipients that are used in L-troxin, for example, sometimes people even do better when they do a compounded T4, which has even less excipients. So again, I think
Right.
it's fair enough to start with the standard because it's available. It's relatively cheap as well. Because when we start to do compounding T4, T3 thyroid extract, it can start to get more expensive. So that's something that needs to be, yes, a practical consideration as well,
Yeah.
and especially thyroid extract that has gone up considerably over the years as well.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've often say, well, at least my medication's not that expensive. So
yeah,
I just take the standard.
yeah,
I've tried the variety of different thyroid medications over the years, but for me,
yeah,
it's sort of ended up for bang for buck. Really, I've just ended back up on the stock standard medication,
yeah,
which is fine.
yeah,
Which is fine. I think
yeah,
it's good to
yeah,
try different ones and see what works for you. And some people,
yeah,
it's like night and day difference. And
yeah,
for me, it just wasn't that night and day difference. So it wasn't quite worth it for me. But for some
yeah.
other people, it's life changing. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's good.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
just
thank you
that,
for
just
that.
that, just that different response to excipients, I think it's important. So I guess as it goes with any even nutrients and herbs, that often if there's a reaction to something, it may not be that particular medication, nutrient, herb. It could just be the other things that go in making it up as
Uh
well.
huh.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point.
just that
Yeah,
awareness.
yeah. The joys of having a thyroid problem, having to do lots of trial and error.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Okay, I just want to clarify something about the medication, because I thought what Amy said was really helpful about the different excipients. which means sort of basically the fillers and other things that are alongside the active ingredient in the medication. But I just wanted to clarify, because when I said I went into the pharmacy to get my script filled, I was given Levoxine, Levoxine, and was told this does not get kept in the fridge, and it is exactly the same as Auroxine or Utroxig, which are the refrigerated versions. And I just wanted to double check, because it was my understanding that L-Troxin, which was the non-refrigerated medication that Amy was talking about, also does not need to be refrigerated. But just for the sake of clarification, I've looked into it after this conversation, and there's both the L-Troxin, which is the one Amy was talking about, does not need to be refrigerated, and is a 10% less active ingredient than the Auroxine, Utroxig refrigerated versions. But also there is Levoxine, which is what I was given, which is the same active ingredient as Auroxine and Utroxig, but does not need to be kept in the fridge. But my point to the pharmacist was that it's not exactly the same. How can it be exactly the same when it's not refrigerated and the others are refrigerated? So there must be different excipients. So just wanted to clarify that there is that other medication as well that is available, and that's certainly what I was given when I went to the pharmacy, until I insisted that I wanted the one that I've always had, the refrigerated one. So I hope that is actually clear. There are two non-refrigerated versions of synthetic T4 that you can now get in Australia, which is called L-Troxin, which is 10% less active ingredient. There is Levoxine, which is the same level of active ingredient. And then there's the two refrigerated versions, Auroxine and Utroxig. But yeah, so I just wanted to, hopefully that does clarify the 4 different types of standard T4 medications available here in Australia, and that you can actually specify which version you want, but you might need to get your doctor to put that on the script. I did speak to my doctor about the Levoxine when I had my next appointment after that incident had occurred, and so I haven't needed a new script since then. But she did say to me in that it can't be the same, because obviously one is refrigerated, one is not. So I mean, the active ingredient might be the same, but the excipients can't be the same. So therefore, there could be a different response by your body, or to my body, but our bodies generally, because the excipients are different. So just be aware of those changes that are coming through. I suspect that are probably helpful for pharmacies for more non-refrigerated medications to be given. And that doesn't mean that's bad. It's just obviously from a storage point of view, it's probably easier, but just be aware that they're not exactly the same, and that your body could respond differently if you start taking a different brand of medication than you have been taking before. Anyway, let's get back to the conversation with Amy. I just wanted to clarify that point. Amy, just before we were recording, we were talking a little bit about sort of the rise of thyroid conditions and increasing autoimmune diseases generally.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit more about what you've noticed the last little while about the increase in thyroid health issues, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so definitely an increasing number of autoimmune conditions in general, and in particular Hashimoto's, because that is definitely the most common autoimmune condition, and because the thyroid gland is so sensitive, it is often one of the first autoimmune conditions to manifest as well. So, and I think in the last few years, I think certainly with everything surrounding COVID, obviously just the stress of everything around those last few years, but also now we have this research, and I've been seeing this in the clinic as well, that COVID infections and vaccines can also contribute towards thyroid issues as well. So they have been shown to Of course, like a subacute thyroiditis, which is just inflammation of the thyroid gland without it being autoimmune necessarily, but it's still inflammation.
Hmm.
Um, and also Graves and Hashimoto's as well. So even if people have been on remission from their Graves and Hashimoto's, it can actually make it worse and make it come back as well. And if people already have thyroid conditions, their thyroid levels can really sort of fluctuate after having COVID as well. So I think, given obviously, COVID is still ongoing, I think it's just that awareness that COVID, whether it's the infection or vaccines, can potentially affect the thyroid, and it's just something important to be aware of as well. So often when people have symptoms like fatigue from COVID or anything like that, it can probably be the COVID as well as the thyroid as well.
Okay.
And it may be necessary to do obviously more extensive testing, certainly checking inflammatory markers as well as the thyroid hormones, and potentially even just more regular monitoring to make sure that people aren't going hypo or hyper.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So if you if you know you've been vaccinated, obviously you
yeah,
would know that.
yeah,
Or if you know you've had COVID, and
yeah,
I mean, I guess you can perhaps not know that you've had COVID, but if you do
yeah,
know you've had COVID, you're saying it would be good for a patient to just be a bit more aware, and
yeah,
it could have
yeah.
re-triggered thyroid symptoms,
Yes,
and so to make sure that when you're seeing your doctor, you're getting those levels checked and the
yes,
inflammatory markers. And
yes,
okay,
yeah,
yeah, I think that's good advice. We know that viruses generally can
yeah,
trigger autoimmune diseases, can't they? So
yeah,
that was one of
yeah,
my concerns with COVID. It's like, oh, what's this going to mean? How's this going to, I know that
yeah,
viruses can trigger autoimmune diseases. So,
yeah,
yeah, how's this all going to play out? So it's interesting that you're saying research showing that there is
yeah,
now
yeah,
increasing autoimmune diseases generally. And
yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
Hashimoto's number one autoimmune disease. So no
Yes,
surprises that we're we're not that we're impacted.
yeah,
Yeah.
and also like
And
sorry, any Graves, rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes, they've also all been shown to happen after COVID as well. So,
interesting. Okay.
so one of the reasons is obviously with the spike protein, it attacks the ACE receptors, which are not only just rich in the heart and lungs, but the thyroid gland is quite rich in these particular receptors as well, as
Ah,
are the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the adrenal glands, the ovaries, the
ah,
testes, and the pancreas as well. So we can see that it can affect a lot of metabolic things as well. So
hmm,
that's why the thyroid gland can be like a bit of a target for the spike protein.
right. Okay.
So,
Yep. And is there a difference? Like, is the research showing a difference between sort of natural infection or vaccination, or is it's just sort of all together, or it's
all
hard to tell?
probably hard to tell at the moment, but there's certainly been reports of both.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So
Uh, so apart from monitoring and making sure that you are obviously then anything in particular that if you know you've got Hashimoto's or Hashimoto's or Graves, really, I suppose is really what we're talking about, and have had COVID perhaps recently, or have had some issues since you've had COVID or since you've had the vaccination, is there anything that we can do to help improve our health? I suppose that's the question. Supplements or this might lead us into the general diet and lifestyle questions, but is there anything COVID and thyroid specific?
yeah, yeah. So certainly regular monitoring of your thyroid symptoms and the bloods as well. So even if your bloods weren't due until another sort of 3 months or 6 months, it might just be worth getting that checked again, especially if you're feeling unwell. Um, in terms of lifestyle, really trying to optimize for all those lifestyle factors like sleep, especially obviously your diet, anti-inflammatory diet, managing your stress as well. So all those lifestyle things. And in terms of supplements and herbs, I mean, obviously this will vary from one person to another, but
Sure.
essentially, especially with that additional of COVID, you want that extra anti-inflammatory support as well, like omega-3, for example, quercetin. You know, quite, I think I'm sure many people would already be on many sort of supplements already, but this is where it can also potentially be helpful to sort of speak to someone as well, just to make sure that so we've got sufficient anti-inflammatory and antioxidant support in as well. Your gut health, your probiotics, fish oil, like I said, quercetin, resveratrol, curcumin from turmeric. So potentially there's a lot of things. So again, you may not need all of that. And some people may already be on some of those things, but certainly we know that higher doses of, for example, curcumin, NAC, resveratrol, for example, bromelain, which is from pineapple, and that's in a lot of anti-inflammatory support formulas. Just additional doses of some of these herbs and nutrients can help as well. But again, this is where it may just be worth speaking to your local naturopath as well.
Yeah. So that you're getting what you individually need and not just a general, let's just throw everything at it. You don't want to be wasting your money or doing yourself any damage by taking things that you don't need or at doses that you don't need. But I think what you're saying is that, if you are unwell after, for a season, there might be extra things you need. Let's just really kind of mop everything up and, reduce your inflammation, get your immune system kind of working well, and get you back on track. I think is that
definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So is there anything else about COVID you want to say, or I'll ask you some other questions? But it's good to have this conversation.
I think just that awareness that COVID can affect the thyroid health, because often I found people that aren't always aware of that. That's not out there in the media or anything, but there's certainly because it started off with my own observations over the last few years, but also like I said, now there's a lot of published papers on COVID affecting thyroid health as well as other autoimmune conditions.
Okay.
Have that awareness.
That's good. Awareness is always the first step, isn't it? As well, and that's why we exist here on this podcast is to spread awareness. So that's really helpful. You were talking just then about sleep and anti-inflammatory diet and some of those diet and lifestyle factors that that I'm passionate about. I know you talk about in your book, Slow Butterfly. But what are your kind of go-to diet and lifestyle recommendations for thyroid patients?
So I think it's certainly to cover all those aspects of lifestyle, and the more we can do from lifestyle, it's not going to only improve the thyroid health, but it'll just improve life in general, and it'll also reduce the risk of other autoimmune conditions, and also later on just other chronic illness as well. So it's I think it's important to remember that yes, it's important now for thyroid health, but it's important for everyone. And obviously, when we start to instigate good habits, it filters on around to family and friends as well, so it improve their health as well. So one of the obviously very important key pillars is sleep, and I think it's often one that because we often sort of talk about diet, but obviously they're all important, but sleep is often one we tend to sort of sometimes put aside because just the sort of busy life and everything. But I think it's really important to really try and optimize sleep as best as we can, and making sure there's good sleep hygiene. We're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, because so much happens when we sleep. And I always say there's a reason why 1/3 of our lives is meant to be sleeping.
Yeah, 1/3's a lot, isn't it? What do you think? 1/3 of your life is asleep. Yep, that's a lot.
So hormonal balancing for thyroid. Again, there's more specific research on how we need adequate sleep for thyroid function, how disrupted sleep can affect thyroid function. It goes both ways, but also a lot of other things happen when we sleep, like we detox. The other metabolic hormones, insulin, ghrelin, leptin, there's balancing happening there. So many things are happening, and that detoxification and cleansing, and also just emotional cleansing as well. There's a lot of things that happen at all different parts of the brain. I think it's really important to really just optimize sleep as best as we can. And if we have to use obviously sleep hygiene, meditation, etc., all those sort of strategies can help. And if we need to use certain supplements, then so be it. But I think that's a real priority as well.
Yeah, and that's probably something that I think we do underestimate. I certainly have underestimated that over time. And I don't know what your experience is, but I have a theory that a lot of people with autoimmune thyroid conditions are the type of people that just go, 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 and they
Yes.
burn the candle at both ends, and they
Yeah.
just uh, in that sort of very driven, and so sleep will be compromised because I can't fit everything in my day. I have to get everything
Yes.
done, and
Yeah.
sleep probably would be one of the things that we compromise on. Is
Yeah.
that your
I, I,
observation too?
I would agree, definitely. Yeah, it's often, we were just trying to do too much. And certainly, certainly in my younger years, you often think you don't appreciate sleep. You think, oh, waste. And
So you mentioned sleep, supplements for sleep. Is there, I mean, I take melatonin. That's been a game changer for me
yeah,
for sleep, actually, because sleep's been a terrible,
yeah,
I'd say even as a little girl, I wasn't a good sleeper. So
yeah,
generally the last few years have been really helpful. I've tried lots of other things.
yeah.
Melatonin's really helped me. But I know there are others, I mean, there are other supplements and medications, but are there common ones that you find, that, yeah, that could help?
Yeah, I mean, I think even like a simple magnesium, like a magnesium glycinate, can be quite good before bed. And sometimes people that's all that someone might need. There are other sleep herbs as well. So there's a lot of if you're seeing a naturopath, that they can make up some liquid sleep herbs, or there's a lot of formulations out there which combine a few different herbs as well. So
Hmm.
that they can be sort of nice, sort of gentle formulations to use as well. They're available over the counter as well. So I think it would be worth just
Yeah.
trying something simple like that. And then certainly melatonin as an oral capsule is very helpful. Just a small dose, 2-3 milligrams is often all that people need. And
Yeah.
there's also some formulations which is like it's a cream that has magnesium, a little bit of magnesium, and some melatonin in there as well, just topical. And
Ah,
quite a lot of patients like that particular one as well.
it's a cream. Oh, I
Yeah,
haven't heard
yeah,
of that.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah. So yeah, so even simple things like that, as well as even just those sleep hygiene things like preserving your own melatonin as well. So after about 9 o'clock, melatonin starts to get produced. So we want to make sure the lights are dim. We're not ideally looking at screens, and if we are, and we have to be, then using those blue light blockers as well, or amber glasses, and sort of just to preserve as much melatonin as we can, because not only is it a sleep hormone, but it's a very powerful antioxidant as well,
okay.
more so than vitamin C. So, you know, it's got so many other health benefits that we want to preserve as much as we can naturally as well. And
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
getting in the morning, getting that morning sunlight, because that also helps to regulate our circadian rhythm, but for much later on as well. So, yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
if
good. I
you,
like the way you put that, preserving your natural melatonin. I think I like that.
yeah,
That's a good
yeah,
perspective. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's good.
just those relaxation things before bed, whether that's meditation or some gentle reading, but nothing too heavy.
Yeah. 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 So really, like, of yeah, we talk a lot about diet and lifestyle, but I think what you're saying is that sleep is often underrated or sort of cast aside, or,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
I'm eating really well, and
yes,
I've cut out the chemicals out of my shampoo.
yeah,
Why am I not better yet? Well, maybe
yeah,
sleep.
yes, yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's a common one, and certainly from personal experience as well. We just don't take it as seriously. I think all of us that have sort of busy sort of lives in different sort of ways. And in my early years, it would have been night shifts and doing all sorts of crazy hours, and you just get on
Mm,
with it because that's just your life as a doctor. It's sort of just like life. So so often people dismiss that, or even people have children or other work. Might be night shifts at work. It's just like part of their life. So often we don't appreciate a simple thing like sleep. So I know it's not always practical. Often, people are like nurses are working night shifts or any other emergency workers. It's difficult, but at least try and get some rest and relaxation when you can, and try and regulate it as best as you
mm. Well, I suppose that's part of what you were
can.
saying earlier about awareness being so important. And once
Yeah,
you can really kind of even intellectually know just how important sleep is,
yeah,
then the flow on for that will be, well, maybe I do need to prioritize a little bit more than I have been.
yeah,
And so even just understanding just how important sleep is,
yeah,
uh,
exactly.
it has a flow-on effect. Even if it's gradual, it takes a while sometimes too, doesn't it, to accept, all right, this is actually more important than I realized it was.
Yeah,
Okay, now I'm going to start to prioritize it.
yeah, yeah. And once it becomes a habit that you say, okay, I'm going to switch the screens off, no TV, no phones, no nothing after this time. I'm going to do a little 10-minute meditation or something like that. It's a matter of, as with anything, it's a matter of it just becoming a habit, and after a few weeks, it starts to become a habit, and it's just
Mm.
your natural. Yeah, that's just how it is now. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think that, well, as part of that slowing down at the end of the day, and I
yeah,
know, uh, yeah, I want to come back to I want to come back to your book, which, I mean, Slow Butterfly, I think, is a very creative name for the book. So tell us about the name of your book. Tell us a little bit about your book. I mean, I've had a read through it. I think it's very um, well, it's full of lots of research, which obviously I'd expect from a doctor, like that. And so there's a lot of the evidence behind all of what you talk about, and some good thyroid basic information to
yeah,
start with.
yeah,
But there's a real gentleness to your book, which perhaps goes with that, the delicacy of of the butterfly and the
yeah.
sensitivity of the thyroid. But tell us a little bit about Slow Butterfly and how it came to be and what your heart is for your book.
Yeah, yeah. So always have loved writing, and it was always a dream to sort of write books, and hopefully this is the first of many. Um, and I always wanted to write a health book, and then I decided, this was a condition I was seeing a lot of, and as we said earlier, so so common scenarios like people not feeling well, they don't have answers even though their blood results are normal, or obviously the other end of the spectrum where they have been diagnosed but still not feeling well despite medication. And because I was just seeing a lot more of that, and I know many other practitioners do as well, I really wanted to sort of get that, yeah, just get that knowledge and practical advice out there as well. Um, so I actually started writing it during COVID, when things were a little bit quiet at the clinic as well. Um, and yeah, it was a couple of years or so, and I really wanted to sort of make sure. Yeah, I'm interested obviously in the research, but I think it's also something that a lot of people would want to know as well, like what is the reasoning behind this as well. So that took a fair while. In terms of the title, obviously the thyroid gland is described as butterfly shaped, and slow butterfly in terms of I was speaking to someone about the title as part of my writing group, and so we came up with all sorts of names. And originally, it was going to be healing Hashimoto's holistically, or something very medical or health related.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Hmm.
then we thought, and I was speaking to someone who wasn't from a health background, so she was looking into that and managed to get her perspective on it. She said, "Oh, it's butterfly shaped," and so as we talked about that, we thought, well, it's this thing is slowing down, so let's just say slow. So it's still beautiful, just a little bit slow. We're just gonna, you know. So that's how that came about. Blue because, well, a couple of things. I mean, from like a yoga perspective, the throat energy center is depicted as blue, and I love the
Mm.
color blue. But also, like many years ago when I went to Costa Rica, I saw these blue, electric blue butterflies there, and yeah, so that's how that came about as well. So it's sort of
Yeah, it's pretty.
so yeah, so it's bringing together
Yeah.
that traditional blues, that sort of throat chakra or energy center. It's the bit between the heart and the head as well. So that's obviously what I sort of go into a bit later in the book. Is sort of taking a totally different view of the thyroid from a different perspective. That this is about communication, expression, authenticity. That also goes into living in alignment and purpose, and not just living on autopilot as many of us can do.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've got a chapter in there called "Living by Grace" or "Living with Grace,"
Yeah,
and yeah, what does that mean for you? Is that part of what you're just saying about living in
yeah,
alignment and with purpose? And is that what living
yeah,
with grace is?
yeah. Well, Grace is also the name of my beautiful 12-year-old Labrador. So
Oh, right. Well, there we go. Well, we can't all live with her, so but we can probably all live with different Grace. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I didn't realize
So
that. That's
it's
cute.
like a double meaning. So
Hmm.
yeah, so that was more, I guess, yeah, reflecting, I guess, on my own journey as well, in terms of, from those days of being sort of quite stressed and burnt out, and thinking, this 10-minute model of healthcare, I'm not really making people better, and just really questioning everything I was doing. Like, do I really want to be a doctor? Do I really want to stay in medicine? I don't think I can. And starting to slowly, and it's a journey. We can't all suddenly leave our jobs, and we've all got
Yeah.
responsibilities. But it was a process where I just started to question, what do I like, what do I not like, and as I said, it had got to a point where I thought, I want to travel. I want to see Australia and New Zealand, because a lot of my friends had been here for 6 months or a year and just had a bit of an experience. I thought, let me just try for a year or two. And see also if medicine is different in other countries. Is it just England, or
Mm.
is it NHS? So that's sort of how it started. And then, as I said, I sort of got into integrative medicine here, and started to sort of just do courses in anything I was interested in, whether it was, Ayurveda, yoga, Reiki, EFT, just anything, herbal medicine, and just really followed without thinking too much. I just thought, I'm interested in this, I'm going to try this out. And then
Yeah.
that's really just what's happened over the years. I've just done things I've interested in, that I felt in alignment with. And now I would say that I'm working where I feel more aligned. Yes, I'm interested in the medicine,
Mm.
but I'm interested in all these other things. You know,
Mm.
um, the whole aspect of health, just not just the physical, but the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual as well. And
Yeah.
also not being afraid of that as well. I think in your early years as medicine, you're not allowed to think about emotions and spirituality and things like that. So it's like, well, no, this is me. So, which
Yeah.
is why I'm
Yeah.
transparent about who I am and what I'm interested in, and that's being authentic, rather than
Mm.
sort of pretending you don't think that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're going to attract patients that probably are wanting that, I would imagine. And that, I mean, that's one of the things with thyroid health is it's so, the way I see it, so all encompassing. Like
Yes,
it impacts everything. So
yes,
then it's really about everything.
yeah,
So you really do need to take a holistic body, mind, soul, spirit
yeah,
approach
yes,
to your life. So and
yeah,
that's going to help, help with thyroid health as well. But yeah,
yes,
I really liked, yeah, like I said, I think some of the way you put things in the book quite gentle, and it sort of went along with that.
yeah,
The butterfly analogy really beautifully, and a good reminder too that I think it is. I mean, it is a sensitive gland. We sometimes, I forget sometimes. I think I'm not a particularly delicate person, but I forget that my thyroid gland is delicate and
yeah,
sensitive, and so it was a good reminder to be a bit more gentle and perhaps to slow down and think about that sort of transformative
yeah.
effect. So thank you for writing. Thank you for writing the book the way you did. And if people want to get a copy, how do they do that?
So it's available through all the major online bookstores, including Amazon as well, and some small
Yep.
bookstores. But yeah, they'll probably be
Yeah. Okay. Great. And if people wanted to connect with you, Amy, or work with you, are you open to new patients? How does that, or how should people connect with you?
yeah. So I work currently in Surrey Hills in Sydney, and people can connect to my website, which is just dr.amygajjar.com. I'm also on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Um, yeah, so
Yeah, and I'll make sure we're connected to all those things so that you're easy to find. And as you said before, yes, it sounds like you take patients from all around the place because of the benefit of online sessions these days.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that's
yeah,
that's a real gift, particularly to a lot of our regional people here in Australia, obviously around the world as well. But
yeah,
um, that's probably really filling a gap,
Yeah,
isn't it? For our
definitely.
regional Australians that live a long way from can live a long way from everything,
Yeah,
but particularly good medical care as well. So thank you for all of what you're doing to look after thyroid patients around. Well, certainly Sydney and Australia. So I want to thank you, and thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your perspective, and your expertise. So thank you.
great. Thank you so much, Annabelle. And I also wanted to say thank you for everything you're doing for the thyroid community as well. I think it's great to have for people to have practical resources and programs that they can do for that.
All right, I'll just. All right. Well, here is your KISS Thyroid Coaching segment. A couple of minutes just to sit and reflect on what you've just heard and see whether there is something from this conversation that you need to implement for your own thyroid health. So we covered a few different topics, obviously within the Australian health system. But within that, I mean, I would say, do you have your thyroid health support team in place? And if you don't, then now is an opportunity to add to your thyroid support team. Just like Amy said, there's a number of different allied and medical people that could be in your thyroid health team. And you'll know I've talked about this quite a lot. There's a whole episode on that way back somewhere towards the beginning. I've certainly written about it in my book. So building a support team, I think, is really key. So if you don't have a thyroid support team, I would ask you, do you want to start developing one? In terms of COVID, like have you had COVID recently or a booster perhaps, then maybe that is worth going and doing what Amy suggests and getting your thyroid levels checked again next time you're seeing your doctor, even bringing that a bit earlier if you're noticing some increased symptoms, just to be aware of that and to help really look after your overall whole body health. So do you need to go get some blood tests? And when it comes to sleep, that would probably be the other key thing I think we talked about was how is your sleep? And do you need to start prioritizing sleep a little bit more? And finally, if you want to grab a copy of Amy's book, I definitely suggest you do that. So go grab a copy and support another Australian thyroid health advocate trying to do her bit for spreading the word of thyroid awareness. Obviously, that book will be available globally via Amazon as well. So anyway, thanks everyone, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. If you have enjoyed the content, or perhaps you're thinking, oh, my mum needs to hear this, or my sister, or my bestie, I would love it if you would share this episode with them. That really just helps spread the positive and practical message of Let's Talk Thyroid and helps that broader thyroid community, our friends and family, to live well with their thyroid health. So you can just, share the episode. If you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast, it's free. It's really helpful because then you'll be notified every time a new podcast comes out, and it just makes it much easier to find. There's usually a little subscribe button or a bell or follow often is the terminology. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be helpful. Of course, if you want to leave a review, even better, just a sentence or two about how the podcast has helped you. You can definitely connect with me via letstalkthyroid.com. That's where you'll find access to my book, my coaching, my freebies, and really everything that I offer in terms of thyroid support.